being vulnerable on the internet and putting yourself out there can be very scary. And I think there was a time where I felt like I need to pull back a little bit from who I am in order to present it to people, because I want to make sure I'm accepted. I want to make sure people like us and they like what I have to say. And then it was the learning curve of realizing you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. We've just found ourselves getting more and more comfortable over the years. And there are some times where Paula and we look at each other and we were like, what are we saying on camera right now? What are we doing? This is so unhinged. The people who we do make happy by being ourselves are the people that I want around.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reactorverse podcast brought to you by Passionfruit, where we interview everyone in the reaction space. I'm joined today by a very special guest on a very special day. They are one half of the Gallifrey Gals. It is Kat. Kat, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah, as I mentioned, today is very special. It's your birthday, actually. So happy birthday.
As I told you, absolutely forgot when we scheduled this.
Yeah. So what's also special is that we're recording this on Monday. So if you're seeing this as it debuts, it's actually going to be the same day that we're recording. It's going to be a very fast turnaround. So if you're seeing this as it comes out, please tell Kat happy birthday in the comments. But I'm very excited to have you here. I got to find you through my recent venture into finding a lot of people's Battlestar reactions that are going on right now, because it's my favorite show of all time, and I'm glad that it's having a resurgence through a lot of channels now. I know I just did an interview with Funny Little Gal Reacts, and she gave you a nice plug about how she wants people to go check out your reactions because she just finished the series herself. So that is how I sort of found this channel, and I was able to sort of start diving through that recently.
I adore Angela so much. I kind of stumbled upon her as well because of our Battlestar Galactica reactions. When we started it up, I was like, how are other people kind of tackling how they're editing this? I'm very curious. And then I found Angela, and then I just found myself watching Angela's stuff. I was like, oh my God, wait, she's fantastic. Then she started doing Doctor Who, and I was like, oh, how the tables have turned, because now I'm watching this and I'm all about it. So
yeah, now you get to enjoy as the expert there.
Such a fun ride.
Yeah. But yeah, I want to talk about, your experience with the channel and everything, sort of how you got here. I guess starting with, as I said, your partner for the channel, Paula. How did you two meet? I guess what's the story there?
So Paula and I, who, gosh, I love so dearly. We met I think it was 2018 when we started, maybe end of 2017. We met when we were on a previous channel. Her and I actually didn't know each other. She got interviewed to be on the show where I was the fan of Doctor Who, and she had never seen Doctor Who before, which is one of my favorite things of all time. And so her and I met on the first day that we shot a promo together, where we were like, hey, come watch us watch this thing. And then the first day we sat down to watch Doctor Who together, we watched almost Eccleston's first whole season in one sitting. Wow. And it was one of those Step Brothers moments where we looked at each other and we were like, are we best friends now? Are we best friends? And now here we are all these years later, and it's wild. And I'm so grateful to have her around,
Yeah. It's interesting. The dynamic was always, for that first run of it, was like you as the expert, Paula as the newbie. Yes. Was that something deliberately sort of constructed, as opposed to like something that you both hadn't seen before, like this, sort of guiding her into that show? Yeah,
that was definitely the intention to start with, which was someone who had seen the show and was a big fan, and then someone who hadn't seen it. So that fan and noob sort of dynamic there. And I remember thinking to myself, because it felt so new. Like, I know reactions had been around for a little bit still at that point, but I didn't really know much about it. And so falling into that space, and I kind of was like, I don't really know why people would be interested in seeing this. Cut to me sitting on the couch watching Paula watch Doctor Who for the first time. And then I was like, oh, this is what people are doing with us. They're getting exactly what I'm doing right there and sitting down with her to see that. And so it took us about 5 years to get through all of Doctor Who to catch up to now she's caught up. She's a full-on Whovian who has seen all of New Who. But we had also turned the tables too, because we had such a great friendship and dynamic. And she found out I had never seen Star Trek: The Next Generation. And she was like, are you kidding me? That's my favorite show. And we were like, uh-oh. And so we just did the flip-flop, and then it became that dynamic once again, but we both got to experience it on the other side. So
did you both have, like, I guess a specific, interest in sci-fi? And that sort of guided you towards, where you would take the channel, or is that something you just found between one another?
Sci-fi, we both have a huge love for sci-fi. Huge. She definitely had more of the Star Trek sort of thing, on her end. She's also into other sci-fi as well. And for me, Doctor Who and Star Wars, I've always felt drawn towards it. And a conversation that Paula and I have a lot when we're watching sci-fi is there's something so special about how it can conquer such difficult real world conversations, but using the sci-fi aspect of it, which kind of puts it just out of, like people's mind. It's like just out of the norm. So it's enough for people to be like, oh, this feels different. Oh, this feels very similar. So yeah, sci-fi was a big thing that we were both really drawn to. And as we, when we started our channel and went to go do our own thing is when we started to kind of branch out of that a little bit. We found ourselves starting to watch other shows. We watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I had never seen. And Paula was like, this is one of my favorite animated shows. And then I was like, well, now I got to show you one of my favorite animated shows, which was Steven Universe. And so we've just been kind of going back and forth. But sci-fi is definitely, I'd say, a solid foundation for who we are and our channel.
Yeah, you got to have sort of that firsthand experience of like, what reactions do for people, which is seeing that experience again through someone's eyes, vicariously reliving it. And for, like you said, for things like sci-fi and Doctor Who, the great thing about it is that sort of education is in Doctor Who's DNA. And so there's always a lot to sort of chew on and dissect from each episode. It's not just something you sort of like toss away. Once you've done with it, you got to really think about it for a lot of them. And I found, in the beginning for a lot of channels, for a lot of duos specifically, it takes a little bit for the banter to sort of get steam between one another. Did you feel any difficulty trying to just like articulate yourself on camera in that way, or did it come pretty naturally to you?
I laugh because I just immediately think of how easily Paula and I banter and get out of control with it. Like sometimes I think we're forgetting that we're actually in front of camera to watch a show sometimes. And our banter and like we're like, oh gosh, we've been talking for 10 minutes. We've got to get into this. When we first sat down to do it though, and gosh, when I go back and look at some of those videos from our very early days, you can see there's some nerves. Like I'm very nervous because I'm like, what if this person doesn't like this show? That's gonna break my heart. Like that's gonna hurt my soul if she doesn't like it. I hope she likes it. And you can tell like I do some nervous talking, and she also does. We have that like nervous little bit of like, are we saying the right thing? Are we saying too much? And I think something we learned over the years is that no matter what to someone, we're either going to be not saying enough or we're going to be saying too much. Right. Because can't make everybody happy, unfortunately. I wish we could, but it's just not possible. So yeah, we found our flow, and we just go with it. We have no idea whatever's going to really come from it, but we just roll with it.
Yeah. And, as we mentioned, a little ahead, finding other people's reactions and stuff like that. did you look further into the reaction space as you got more involved with it yourself, or is that something that sort of came later as you just sort of focused on your own channel?
So I feel like I kind of had, I don't want to say necessarily like a backwards experience, but I fell into reactions and was kind of like, whoa, I don't know what's going on here. And then I got introduced to Greg Alba over on the Real Rejects. And I got to do a couple guest spots on there back in the day. And then also Jabby Koué is another one whose channel I got to go on. And I found myself that way kind of learning more about other reaction channels. But then at the start of 2020, when we, went off to go do our own thing, I then found myself actually starting to research other reactors out there. I was like, okay,
Right.
who else is watching Doctor Who? And that's when I started to find people whose usernames I'm probably going to say wrong, and I always feel so bad. But there's Seska says, yes.
Yeah.
I stumbled upon her channel, and it just kind of started to go from there, where I just started to find all these different people watching all the same shows that I love, or a show that I'm about to love because I'm watching it for the first time.
Right.
But I didn't find myself getting as involved. I think there's a little bit of like imposter syndrome or like intimidation, where I'm like, I don't know if I belong in this space, or maybe it's not like, do these people want to interact, or, just kind of like those nerves that come with interacting with the online world.
Right.
And I will admit that Angela from Funny Little Gal Reacts was really one of the first times that I found myself being like, I want to interact. Like, I really want to interact with this person. I want to interact with this space more, and I want to be more involved with the people who are here.
Right.
It just took one little, not that anyone ever made me feel or made us feel not included. It's kind of like that self-deprecation that kind of goes on sometimes.
Right.
But when I found Funny Little Gal Reacts, and I found her on my own and was like, wow, like, she's awesome. And then she happened to find us on her own and immediately started commenting on our videos and all these things. And I was like, wait, I recognize this person. Oh, this is the person who I was. Oh my gosh. And then that connection happened. And I was like, wow, this is really special. Like, I can't believe I ever made myself feel like I couldn't do this previously,
Yeah. Yeah, right. Totally. Yeah. I get that. Yeah. The internet, in general, like sort of like the online content creator space, just doesn't really have those bridges, sort of inherently there for people to reach out to one another. Socially, I think that's like still something that people a lot have to learn once they get into the space, to see each other as like, peers, sort of colleagues in a sense. The reaction space has been really great, for at least from my perspective, in that way, where like a lot of people are really open to collaborations and to helping one another, just because it is almost a very much like us versus them, being like, sort of copyright issues and stuff like that. Like, you guys all face like very similar issues in that sense. When you started the channel in 2020, were there any sort of lessons or standards that you sort of took from your previous year of doing it that you wanted to apply to now your own personal venture?
Yeah, our big thing when we kind of went off on our own was we really just wanted to find ourselves. We wanted to be able to have space to do so. And we realized that we were getting that. We were giving ourselves that opportunity to be like, hey, what do we want to do? We've got Doctor Who and Star Trek, but maybe we want to do other things. Maybe we want to watch something both of us haven't seen. Maybe we want to, take those things and see how we can churn it out in a way that feels good for who we are. And at the start of 2020, it was very, for a lot of people, a lot of us didn't know what was about to come. And so we started our own. We had recorded 2 videos in person, one for a Star Trek episode, one for a Doctor Who episode. And we were like, oh my gosh, hey, like, here's our channel. We're going to be doing our cool in-person reactions. And we're so excited. And then everything stopped.
Right.
And everything stopped, and it immediately became, how do we do this? Like, how do we do this over the computer? How do we record with one another? How do we, I have a crappy webcam and a microphone in my ear, my earphones. Like, how are we going to get through this? And I think that first year was really about letting go and just understanding that there were going to be hiccups and there were going to be bumps along the way, but that was okay because we were still doing what we did best, which was be ourselves, be honest, be vulnerable. And our audience was there and supportive of it. That's another one. When I go back to our videos from 2020 and I like glance at them and I'm like, bless all of the people and all of their patience through that time, because it's just like a grainy image and, a sheet hanging up in the background, like echo audio. But everyone stuck around. Everyone was just like, no, we get it. And we're all going through a hard time and we all want to be together through this. And I think that was really very special. And the channel itself definitely pushed me in a corner to broaden my horizons. Years ago, you would catch me saying, I'm never going to be an editor. I never want to do that. And now I've been editing for 4 years.
Right. Yeah.
Now I'm an editor. Now I'm conquering those things. I'm not the best editor, but I'm doing the best that I can. Right.
Yeah. It works. It gets the job done. Because like you said, in that era, everyone had a lot of patience with what was going on, especially people who were trying to start channels. Like the pandemic era, it was a huge boom to the reaction space. People who started channels specifically because they couldn't really go out and do things and like meet people, and so they wanted to reach out in another way. It was like that was like the sort of like Wild West year. People trying new things, new technologies, learning new skills. So I think everyone was really sort of like patient to see like how a lot of that panned out. Were there any significant learning curves for you? I guess technical wise, editing and lighting, recording, all that stuff, but also just presence wise, being on camera, being, sort of an on camera talent in a way.
I think that something for Paula and I that I think absolutely helped us is that we both are performers. I grew up doing theater, and then, same as Paula. And then, I moved out to Los Angeles. She did as well. We've both been in film, both in front of and behind the camera. And so I think we really had a good understanding, what was needed there. But through the process, because we don't have a script, so it's like, I think both of us are, we have that, like, I'm an actor, put a script in front of me. I'm going to study those lines. I'm going to make that character real and I'm going to bring it to life. And this was, the character is me. The character is me. And being vulnerable on the internet and putting yourself out there can be very scary. And I think there was a time where I felt like, and I can't speak for Paula on this, but for myself, I kind of felt like, do I need to pull back a little bit from who I am in order to present it to people, because I want to make sure I'm accepted. I want to make sure people like us and they like what I have to say. And then it was the learning curve of realizing you're not going to be able to make everybody happy. And the people who we do make happy by being ourselves are the people that I want around. And I think that's been probably the biggest lesson, is being online and how to balance that in the day-to-day life. Paul and I talk a lot, both on the channel and with our patrons, if you're watching this, we love you so dearly. We've just found ourselves getting more and more comfortable over the years. And there are some times where Paula and we look at each other and we were like, what are we saying on camera right now? What are we doing? This is so unhinged. But we love it and it feels good, and other people love it and they keep coming back, and it makes them feel good, and it's very nice,
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's always sort of like the biggest through line I hear from people is like, the best thing you can do is just remind yourself to be yourself, because that's how you sort of garner an audience that like knows you specifically. You don't have to keep up this sort of, these structures underneath you to feel like you got to act one way, do certain things, and that way it becomes like a very personal space for you. And you've mentioned it a couple of times, just that vulnerability that you can have on camera is such a big part of the channel, and it's a big thing for a lot of reactors that are able to watch really emotional shows and stuff like that. Vulnerability on camera is like a craft in a way as much as it is like just a genuine sort of interaction for this type of work. How do you approach getting into that sort of vulnerability as you feel it coming on during recording, and sort of just being present in the space and letting yourself sort of, like you said, exist as yourself on camera during those times?
It's like, because again, for myself, I've always like prided myself on being a very upfront person. Not like blunt in an aggressive way, but just like blunt in the way of, this is who I am. This is my life. These are my life experiences. And while it may be scary to share them, by sharing them, I can show someone else, even if it's just one other person, I can show one other person they're not alone in this. And that's something that I needed so much growing up that I didn't have. And so my big thing is, if I can provide that for other people, then I'm doing something right and something that feels good. And I am, my gosh, I can cry at the drop of a spoon, like if it affects me the right way, I'm like, oh my God, the spoon, is it okay? And it ties back into, again, for me, being vulnerable online can draw sometimes the best out of people and also sometimes the worst out in people, because some people don't want to see it. And that's okay, and that's, again, is the learning process of understanding, what, it's not for that person. And that's okay. That person can walk away. I can turn my eye and not look at their mean YouTube comments, but I don't know exactly when it happened. I wouldn't be able to pinpoint it, but, I'm very open about my struggle with my alcoholism, and I'm, 8.5 years sober. And that's something I've always been very upfront with on the channel. My mental health journey really started in 2020. Because that was when I got to get into therapy and I got diagnosed, and all of that was happening while we were running the channel. And it was either I chose to, for me, it was like, okay, I either choose to talk about this or I try to hide it. But if I hide it, it's not going to feel right, Right. And so taking it and just choosing to be, you know what, I'm going to be open about this. And that's going to make me a little bit more susceptible to some tears while watching some TV shows. But taking the moment afterwards to talk about, like, this is why this hit me really hard, because this reminded me of something from my childhood, or this, plays really heavily into my mental health journey. And sure. I know with Paula, it's very, very similar. She's also very upfront about the things that she has dealt with, or whatever show could trigger those things. And like Battlestar Galactica, that's been one heck of a journey.
Yeah,
that's been one heck of a journey.
Yeah. And like you said, applying your personal sort of, experiences to the show in that way is, how those things sort of come forth. In my experience, that also applies to when I, have people in my life, whose story I know, and I'm able to apply their experiences to what I'm watching, because then I feel, a lot of empathy towards, like, how that's impacting them, and vice versa, how that's, informing the story itself. Have you, been able to have that experience with one another over the course of the, your time with the channel, just getting to know, each other's like story more, and sort of like, feel, how this impacts both of you collectively?
Oh, 110%. Paula and I we have learned so much about one another over the years of sitting down and watching shows together. And you don't necessarily really think about it in that way. I watch TV shows with friends, and it's, we don't really think about it. You're sharing that moment, but maybe you don't talk about it. you know, to the full extent. But Paula and I, sitting there and watching these things, now are talking about it to the full extent, you know, in our reviews and our explanations and our outros, you know.
Right.
We start diving into these conversations and I might mention something and then Paula looks at me and goes, I didn't know that about you. And I'm like, oh yeah. And then we're talking and we're sharing those things. And so we've definitely, it is fascinating to know that people could go back to the very start and watch her and I's relationship grow hugely. Like you can see both of us growing individually, but you also see our friendship growing over the years too. Because we really put ourselves in it to the full extent to really learn and love one another, you know, for who we are. And I've gone through a lot of changes over the last several years, and Paula has been nothing but loving and accepting and, you know, understanding. And she's grown so much in the years. And, you know, through the journey of starting the channel on her own, she also had her own channel kind of blowing up in a way, which is on her personal channel, Paula Deming. It's called Things Get Dicey. It's very silly tabletop comedy, like sketches and whatnot. And so also getting to see her expand in her work and see her challenge herself was also such a inspiration for me to push myself and challenge myself. And it's really been very special and has really pushed us very close together. And I'm very, very grateful for it and for her.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. You know, having that dynamic between the two of you, you know, develop over the years is obviously like a big part of, you know, what people are drawn to, you know, what makes it valuable as its own unique space. And now, you know, watching, you know, your most recent reactions to Battlestar and such, the banter, like you said, is just there. You know, it's just like boom, boom, boom. For most of it, you're just able to pop off so quickly with one another. When you started, you know, diving through more shows beyond Doctor Who and Star Trek, was there any sort of, you know, distinct strategy between you two to, you know, what shows you wanted to watch, you know, that maybe, again, one was showing the other or like you hadn't seen before, or, you know, things that you were just sort of, you know, spitballing on what you could do with the channel?
Yeah. We were sticking with that kind of, it was like almost kind of like a weird pressure we put on ourselves. We were like, okay, it's got to be a show that I've seen that you haven't seen so we can sit down and watch it in that way. And there was a point where we realized like, oh, we don't have to do that. We can both be new to the show. What does it matter? What does it matter? There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I think Gravity Falls was our first one that we did that neither of us had seen. And it really felt like it unlocked and opened a door, both for us and for our viewers, because all of a sudden we now had just our viewers who were the fans who had seen everything. And so now they've got this special place to hold where they're able to give us the little goodies and exciting things behind the scenes and the IMDb facts that we can't look up, you know? Yeah. So Gravity Falls was definitely, I really think it was the first show where we were like, man, who cares? And we had some people in our Discord community from our patrons who were like, hey, we think you'd really like this show. And I was just like, all right, like, let's watch it. And then from there, it's just kind of been like, all right, like, patrons, you give us some ideas and then we'll let you guys vote on a couple shows. Like Battlestar Galactica, it was between that and I think Farscape. And our patrons decided for Battlestar Galactica. Hilariously, a lot of them were like, man, I'm so sorry, I'm voting for the show. It's going to break you guys, but I want to watch it so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a journey. And I'm keeping up with it so far. It's been a wild ride already. And you're about halfway done, I think. So best of luck.
We're like partly through, we're almost towards the end of season 2, I think is what it is. We're on like episode 15 or something.
Yeah.
It's getting spicy up in there. It's getting spicy.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to see the rest of it. And once you, caught up with Doctor Who, with Paula, and you got to wait alongside the rest of us, waiting for the 60th anniversary and the Shooty Got Was debut. The fandom around Doctor Who, shifted a lot over the last several years because of,
Yes.
Jodie Whittaker's run, Russell T Davies coming back, Tennant coming back, just a lot of buzz around sort of where the show's going and what's going to happen with it. What was that like, I guess, catching up and being a part of, the zeitgeist now, as opposed to when you were catching up with Paula, and how that sort of dynamic changes with the two of you being on the same level now?
Yeah. For me, I've been watching Doctor Who for a very long time now. And so I've always been on that end of when it's caught up and you've got the fandom who's mad about the recast, they're mad about the new Doctor, they're mad about the new companion, there's always something. And I kind of am very used to that, Obviously in the last few years, it's gotten a little extra intense, one might say. And it was interesting reaching this point with Paula. And I remember when we watched Jodie and the regeneration into the 14th Doctor, David Tennant, yet again. And I can't remember exactly what Paula said, but I remember she just she looked at me and she was like, well, now what? And I was like, we wait, buddy. And she was like, yeah. I hate that. And I was like, yeah, welcome to the freaking crew. Welcome to being a Whovian. We all have to wait now for several months before we get to see the new thing.
Sometimes years.
Yeah, sometimes years. And I think for me, that's been the funniest thing on my end because I'm so used to it. She's like, we have to, the latest season just finished. She was like, we have to wait until the end of the year. And I was like, yeah, dude. Yeah, we gotta wait. I don't know what else to tell you. We're gonna watch some classic Who in between, but we got nothing new coming until several months from now.
Yeah.
I think for Paula as well is because she for so long was making sure to avoid spoilers, and we've both gotten very good at putting the blinders up to ignore a lot of things, and Paula especially had to do that. And now that we're caught up, I think that's now opened a door for her where she's kind of seeing some of that vitriol that she hasn't really quite had to deal with before. And it's, it's got its pros and cons. I think Doctor Who, I think all fandoms with anything, there are pros and cons, there are good, there's bad. And the biggest thing I think is just trying to share with her and remind myself that someone's always going to be mad at something. Someone's always going to be mad at Doctor Who. They're always going to be mad at RTD or Chibnall or, so it's just trying to learn to accept that. And I think I've had a lot of time to already do that. And Paula is, working with dealing with that as well. So
yeah. Yeah, it's a big learning curve for a lot of reactors. Yeah, dealing with the fandoms and sort of how that impacts your personal investment in the show, and just trying to sort of power through that because you want to have your own genuine experience. When you got back into it, now with the most recent season, what was that experience like? Like I said, being just a part of the current conversation of things week to week, and how that was sort of developing as you were watching with everyone else.
It was so much fun. It just made it really put a whole new dynamic out there. Paula and I, we get together once a week to sit and we record a couple episodes for whatever we may be watching, and then all of a sudden it was we're meeting once a week on a Friday now to make sure we watch Doctor Who. And her and I had I don't know, it was just this giddy feeling where I was like, oh my gosh, we have a new episode of Doctor Who this week. And getting to experience that real time with each other, and then getting to experience it real time with the audience was really fun. And it's fun to have Paula there with it too. Now she gets to jump in the comments and she gets to say her theories. And I think that's something that's very, really big about it, is when we were catching up and Paula had never seen it, she's dropping her theories. She's thinking what she's thinking is going to happen. I already know what's going to happen. Everyone else already knows what's going to happen. We love hearing her try to piece it together, but then
Yeah.
to be on that end with her, with both of us trying to figure it out, I say something and she's like, I didn't even think about it like that. And I'm like, well, I don't even know if it's right. And so we now have that new dynamic going back and forth, just trying to piece it together and figure out what's going on. And this new season of Doctor Who was really, really good. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anybody says. I loved it, and so did Paula.
Yeah, I agree. Having that back and forth with it is so important when you're able to be on the same level. Like you said, the theorizing is such a fun part when you have a partner there to sort of do that with on the fly. Similarly, you brought in your partner Parker for
Yes.
Gallifrey Pals for the
Yes.
Acolyte reactions. Again, how was that dynamic different having them there? Trying to sort of theorize with you and just go about it week by week with each episode.
That was, oh my gosh. There's so much good and so much hard that came from doing that. I thought that the Doctor Who fandom and the Star Trek fandom were intense. I forgot how intense the Star Wars fandom can be. So there was so much. One, it was very exciting because, Paula, it's not that she's not a Star Wars fan. She's seen, a few of the movies and whatnot. But my partner and I, over the last year and a half-ish, we started watching The Mandalorian. And then I wouldn't shut up. I just kept asking questions. I just kept asking. I was like, what about this? What's going on here? Who's that? And one day they just hit pause and they were like, all right, do you actually want to know? Do you want to do the whole thing? And I was like, let's go. And so together over the course of a year, we watched basically almost all of Star Wars. We did Clone Wars, we did Rebels, we did Bad Batch, we did, all of the movies in chronological order. We did everything to the best of our ability. And so when The Acolyte was coming out, I had reacted to the trailer on my own because I was like, oh, this will be fun to do. I don't know if I'll watch it for the channel, but maybe I'll see how people react to it. And then I realized, and I was like, well, I could watch it on my own, or I could have someone with me who is a Star Wars encyclopedia because they've been reading, the extended universe novels and stuff since they were a kid. And I thought that would be so much fun to introduce, again, that dynamic where we have this huge fan and me who is a fan, but someone who has just endless knowledge about the world and the universe and the galaxy. Right. But still both getting to watch it for the first time, which was really cool because I would have my theories and then Parker would be like, well, here's my theory because of what I've read. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's fascinating. And so it just brought that kind of, I don't know, it just brought a little pip in the step again in a new way. And I think that was a lot of fun. And for our audience who was there to watch and enjoy our content, whether or not they enjoyed The Acolyte, the people who are there to support us were very, very loving and very accepting. And they enjoyed getting to see a completely new perspective on things. And I think that was really fun to watch that happen because it can be nervous. I was nervous. Parker was nervous. I was like, I hope it, I don't know. I'm sure it'll go well, but also I'm scared. Yeah. And they were like, I'm scared. And we dealt with some vitriol, but unfortunately a lot of us did in the reactor world when it came to The Acolyte.
Yeah. Yeah. In that sense, it's almost a relief because you could be like, it's not personal in a way. It's almost, there are people out there who just really want to just attack the space in a sense. So it's not really even you specifically. It's just they want to find anyone who's sort of enjoying it and bring them down for it. But it could be nerve wracking. You're right. Because just sort of introducing someone, obviously, that you care about into the space that can be, vitriolic at times is a scary thing to sort of, impart upon them and try to get them to, understand hey, some good, some bad, we're taking leave, some of it, but it's all part of the journey. The Acolyte was such a great, I think, start for that because, like you said, you're both on the same level. You're both able to theorize, in ways that you really can't be with, other type of Star Wars because The Acolyte was set in such a unique time period compared to everything else that we've gotten prior to other Star Wars shows. Do you think we'll have Parker on again for any other stuff in the future?
Heck yeah. Absolutely. Especially with, I think we have, what's coming up at the end of the year? It's the
Skeleton Crew.
Skeleton Crew. Thank you. I forgot the name of it. That is one that we are both heavily excited for. And I believe they actually just dropped the trailer. And I told Parker, I was like, you want to do a little trailer reaction? And they were like, oh my God, yeah, oh yeah. And I'm like, I know, it's different, isn't it? Now you're thinking about things in a new way. So yes, we'd love to have them come back on and just be a little nerd over Star Wars. I don't know if we'll do anything else yet. We haven't quite figured out what that might be, but right now for Star Wars is definitely a big one. Though I will be taking Paula on the Clone Wars story. That's going down.
Yeah, definitely. That's plans for the future I think are so important, for this type of work, because you had to anticipate, where, like you said, what's coming up, Skeleton Crew and things like that. And I would say just be careful not to fall into the trap of like, oh, hey, I want to watch this thing, but should we do it on camera? Should we do a thing? Definitely have that, separation of like, we got to be able to enjoy things in our own time off camera.
Yes. Absolutely. So much. Yes, it is. There is a lot of times that like watching Doctor Who, this for me was so new, because anytime I got to watch New Who, it was just on my own time, because when I was watching it with Paula, still New Who was coming out, but I didn't have to wait to watch it for the channel. I was just getting to watch it myself and be along with everyone else watching it for the first time. And then when series 15 was coming up, and I was just like, oh, I can't watch. Oh no, this is like work. And I like looked at Parker and I was like, hey, I gotta watch this with Paula for the channel. And I was like, and then I'm gonna have to come watch it with you later. I hope that's okay. Like, I just didn't process it like that. And now all of a sudden I was like, oh, weird. I gotta wait to watch it for the channel, which I love. And it's been such a great time. And I know for our viewers, that's new for them as well. They're like, we've never gotten to see Kat watch new Doctor Who. They're like, heck yeah, we want to be a part of that. And it definitely it definitely was strange, and there is a fine balance of trying to, there are things that I'm like, we have maybe our patrons or people on YouTube who are like, well, are you going to react to this? And I have to be honest, where I'm like, I just want to watch it on my own time. I don't want it to be work. I love you guys, but I can only do so much, like it's me editing everything behind the scenes. And I'm like, I don't want to. I just want to sit on my couch with a bowl of ice cream and watch this show and ugly cry over it even harder than I would on camera. So finding that balance is definitely interesting. It's not something you'd ever think. I mean, if I were to talk to Kat a decade ago and I'd be like, hey, you know how much you love Doctor Who? Well, guess what? Like, you're going to now be running a channel that all started because of watching Doctor Who. And I'd be like, what are you talking about?
Hey guys, Eric from Passionfruit. Just wanted to thank you for tuning into this episode of Reactorverse. To everyone who's commented on our videos, shared our work, or otherwise supported the channel, we see you, we appreciate you, and we've got a lot of exciting things coming for the creator community at Passionfruit. If you haven't already, the usual stuff on YouTube always helps us. Hitting that like button and subscribing with the bell so you'll be notified when new videos come out. We also have a bi-weekly Passionfruit newsletter that focuses on the creator industry, which you can sign up for through the link in the video description and the pinned comment. Twice a week, you'll get our best stories, as well as exclusive interviews, expert reviews, and the latest resource guides to help you navigate every stage of the creator journey. We've even got a weekend newsletter on the way, with a curated creator spotlight that focuses on the best online content from the people who make it, you. Thanks again for supporting Passionfruit and Reactorverse and helping make your content your business, and giving love to the people who make the web. It creeps up on you in that way, where you're like, just like suddenly it's like one day it's like, oh, I gotta wait for the content, so to speak, to be put out. And to start sort of wrapping things up here, what has been the most consistent obstacle you faced in your time with the channel?
Oh goodness. Consistent obstacle is such a, because I feel like there's, from a technical standpoint, which is me having to completely teach myself how to edit, and especially the early years of our editing and things that I've posted. Again, Bless all of you and your patience. That's been a big thing for me, is the technical side of the aspects of like, okay, I've got to sit down and teach myself how to use a program. I got to teach myself what does it look like editing these reactions, and how do I make it so I'm giving enough for YouTube so there's context, but also I want to make sure that we're, abiding by all the fair use laws and this and that, and then making sure our patrons who are getting full length watch along content, like making sure they're getting what they feel they're paying for. Those are all things that have been definitely a learning curve. It's just, it's managing and running a business. And I didn't fully process that until the last 2 years, really, where I was like, oh, I'm like a business manager. I'm a social media manager. I'm a community manager. I'm a, it's the list and many hats that are on my head. I was like, holy bananas. But I think one of the most difficult things outside of technicality, out of the technical stuff, would be probably my mental health and being excessively online, or as I like to say, chronically online for work. That has probably been one of my most consistent struggles that I'm very honest about with myself, with the channel, with Paula. There's been times that I sit to chat with her to, be like, hey, I'm having a hard time because this video that dropped, people said some things that's really, really hurt me, and so we have to take that moment to kind of sit with one another and, feel what I need to. And the support that I get from Paula is also always wonderful. And the support that I get from, again, the people who care, is always so wonderful. To all of our subscribers and all of our patrons, they are always the light. They're always the light at the end of that tunnel. It's learning, and it has been learning, that even though no one's ever going to, I've already said it at the start of it, but you're never going to be able to make everybody happy. And I think that's been a really hard lesson for me to take in, because it's not just learn it once and you're good and done. There are times when I'm like, yeah, I've learned it. I'm good. I can't. And then another moment comes up where I'm like, okay, I haven't quite learned, because I still need to work through on how to let this go or let it roll off my shoulder. And, you can have 1,000 people standing in a room and 900 of them could love everything that you're doing. But the 10 people there who are just loud, that's the thing, is that they're just loud. They're yelling at the top of their lungs how much they can't stand what you're doing or how you're not doing it right. And working to accept and acknowledge, you know what, those 10 people, I just got to look over them. I got to look over them, because no matter what, it's not going to be enough. But these other 990 people, that matters, and those people matter. And I think that's a big thing throughout this whole thing, has been my mental health journey, and finding the balance between knowing when it's time to step away from myself and knowing when it's time to share those things publicly and vulnerably, and just kind of riding that wave. It's a constant learning curve, constantly growing, constantly, all of those things.
Yeah. Both aspects, very important, the business side, as you mentioned, and the mental health side, because it's such a huge dichotomy in this space is, again, it slowly creeps up on you how many hats you have to wear to make this thing sustainable. And in that sense, it can overshadow the mental health aspect of yourself very quickly, because you don't realize how much you're putting upon yourself. And that's a big thing of what we're trying to sort of talk about here, for Passionfruit in general, is just, the business aspect of things and how you can ideally find that balance between personal and professional in the work. And I guess for yourself, this kind of ties into the next question, which is, how do you feel you've personally grown over the years with the channel?
Oh man. A lot of self-love. A lot of self-love has been learned over the years. And while sometimes I may be able to, or I may not be able to see it, I know that it's still there. But self-love, and also accepting that I'm going to be myself, and the people who want to be around for that are going to stay. And the people who don't are, oops, sorry, an alarm went off. The people who are going to want to stay because they see me for me, they're going to stay. And if they don't want to, that's okay. We say that all the time. I'm like, hey, if you don't like us, it's all right. You don't have to be here. like, you know, there's a part of me back in the day who probably would have been like, well, I gotta quiet down, or I gotta make myself smaller so that those people feel like they can still be here. And I reached a point where I was like, I'm not making myself smaller for people. I'm not doing that. Like, what's the point behind it? And so that's probably been one of the biggest things, is learning how to accept myself, and learning to know that it's okay, that I'm not going to be the same person I was 6 years ago. That Kat at the very start of Paula and, you know, I sitting down to watch it was a very different person. There are still huge pieces of myself that have come through with me to this end, but there's so much about that person from 6 years ago that I'm like, oh gosh, I just don't feel that way about that anymore. Or I just don't feel that I have to be performative in that way anymore. And I think that's something that I can also speak for Paula as well, that we both kind of dealt with and moved through over all these years.
Yeah. It reminds me very much of Matt Smith's final speech about, you know, being different people and how you had to sort of honor, you know, who you were at one point. Yeah. It always gets me.
Goodbye. What are you gonna do? Make me cry right here?
Yeah, it's very applicable. I always tear up at that one as well.
It's hard not to.
The final question in the main interview here is, beyond any monetary or financial value, what is the most rewarding aspect of the channel for you?
A huge one is Paula and I's friendship. That has been one of the most rewarding aspects of this entire journey. I never thought that day several years ago when we introduced ourselves that it would be someone who I would end up caring for so deeply, who would be in my life so heavily. You know, we see each other once a week, always minimum, at least once a week. And like, I don't get to say that about a lot of my friends because everyone's so busy and all of this stuff. And it's like, well, we get to work together, which is fun. Yeah. And we get to see each other once a week, and we get to catch up, and we get to do all those things. And that has truly been one of my most favorite things and most beneficial things from the channel. But also our viewers, like, as cheesy as that may sound, I have found some really, really, really beautiful people over the years, and I have some fans who turned into friends, you know, and it's just people who I would have never gotten the opportunity to interact with or to meet. And because of this online, you know, adventure we've been on, I now have, you know, one of my very good friends, he found our channel when we, I can't remember which video he watched, but it was a video where I was openly talking about my sobriety, and he had just started getting sober. And so for him, he was like, I found you at a time that I really needed that. And I needed someone who was talking so openly about that journey. And then we ended up getting connected, and now he's one of my very good friends. Josh, I love you. And I think that is something that's been so surprising for me over the years. And he's not the only one, you know, and I'm very grateful for that, to have found such incredible and beautiful people who live in New Zealand. And I'm like, I would have never, well, when would we have ever had the opportunity to chat or meet or any of those things? And now you're someone who I care about, you know, so much. And, you know, the people who we have who moderate our Discord channel, like, they mean so much to me. And so I think that's the way it has expanded my life and the people in it, I think, has been one of the most beneficial things overall.
Of course. Yeah. It's definitely one of the aspects I love about this as well. It's meeting people, getting to know more people's stories, stuff like that. It's definitely the best part of the internet, in my opinion. That's why I like the space so much.
100%.
Yeah. We do have our final questionnaire, which is just 10 questions down the line for you.
Ooh, let's go.
Yeah, if we can rocket through them, I guess. First question is, what is your favorite TV show of all time?
let's rocket through them. I'm like, oh no.
Also, take your time. Take your time if you gotta go, think about it.
It's such a loaded question, you know? Because like a part of me feels obligated to say Doctor Who because it is one of my favorite shows of all time. Right. And maybe that's just the easy answer to roll with, so I don't overthink it too hard. But Doctor Who is definitely one of my favorite shows. Steven Universe, which we did do for the channel, that is definitely truly one of my favorite animated shows. I think it is a very, 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 very special show that Rebecca Sugar filled with so much love. I'm like, yeah, Doctor Who, Steven Universe, 7 million other things. I think honorary mention, Jurassic Park, Camp Cretaceous, and Chaos Theory.
Yeah.
So dang good.
Then in addition to that, what is your favorite film?
Jurassic Park. I always go to, people ask me that question and I'm like, well, it depends on my mood or it depends on this. And I'm like, no matter what mood I'm in, it doesn't matter if I'm sad, happy, angry, does not matter. You put on Jurassic Park, I'm there. I'm there. I'm sitting down and I'm ready for some dinosaurs.
So I just rewatched a reaction from EOM Reacts watching that the other night, and it holds up. It still holds up. It's still a fantastic time. Yeah. It's
so good. Every time I watch it, I'm like, damn. This is just, it's art. It is art. And I love it.
Next question would be, what stresses you out?
What stresses me out?
Yeah. If there's any specific thing that you can think of.
I just had like a whole document just start like scrolling in my brain. You know, the meme of the woman with all the math and stuff like that? That's me right now, where I'm like, what stresses me out? Right now, what stresses me out is just waking up and having to choose to acknowledge that I can only really control what's going on in my life right now. And even then, I can almost sometimes not control what's going on in my own life right now, you know?
Right. Makes sense.
I think that's one of the biggest things is just like accepting where I'm at and just trying to roll with it.
It's understandable. What helps you relax?
Oh, my cats. Just laying with my cats, hanging out. I would say relaxing. My kitty cats are getting to play some board games. I love playing board games with my friends. I think it's a great way to pass some time. It's very soothing. Even if we're playing maybe an intense board game, I'm still having the time of my life.
Right. I feel you there. What is a hobby? Here's my time to the next one. What is a hobby or passion you have outside of TV and film?
I love board games. I love board games. And that's like kind of newer for me in the last few years because I grew up playing some board games and whatnot, but specifically things like TTRPGs. So for those that may not know, maybe D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, or things that are, related or close to it. I always wanted to get involved in them, but just dealt with some crappy people over the years. And the end of 2021 is when I found myself meeting one of my now very good friends who introduced me to the TTRPG space. And just more heavily getting involved in board games. And actually, Paula is a huge part of that as well because of her channel. She, does sponsored videos for board games and all this stuff. And so there's moments where she's like, you want to come learn this new board game and play it on my channel? And I'm like, heck yeah, I do. Let's go. And so because of that, I've just now expanded it in such a way that I didn't think was going to happen in my life at any point. So board games and TTRPGs have become a really big piece of my hobby love,
Yeah. I know you mentioned you're in LA. Have you ever been to Geeky Teas in Burbank?
Oh, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, heck yeah. I was at Geeky Teas last week. I'll probably be there this week at some point.
Okay.
They just did
Yeah.
their big move. And
Right.
it's really great. I'm very happy for them, the expansion that they've done.
Yeah, I love going there. Yeah, I love the new space that they have.
Yes.
It's really great.
And that was actually one of the, it's hard to find spaces out here that can feel so welcoming, especially in the gaming space, which can be kind of cliquey in a way that's, you know, there's a certain stereotype of people who like to try and take over that world. And Geeky Teas was one of those first places where I was like, oh, I feel like I'm okay to be here. Like, I'm accepted. Like, I'm also allowed to be into board games, even if I'm maybe not the most well-versed, you know?
Totally. Yeah,
So yeah, love them.
definitely. Yeah. What fictional character do you relate to or just care deeply about?
Character that I relate to. You know, something that pops in my head first is Steven Universe. And there's a couple different characters in there that I feel really pinpoint some things on myself. I don't know if you've watched it personally, but there are two characters that came to mind, which is Amethyst and Pearl.
Right.
And especially with Pearl, she has a lot of undealt with trauma in the show that unpacks. I mean, they all do, and it unpacks over the course of the several seasons. But with Pearl, there's a lot of projection and a lot of willing to sacrifice herself for others, but not necessarily looking in the mirror and being willing to do that for herself. And that's something that I've definitely struggled with over the years, is wanting to care for others so deeply that I kind of forget about myself in the background. And learning that, you know, it's like that you put your mask on first before, you know, someone else, because how can you help someone if you're down? And so that's been something for several years that I've been working through, and something that when watching Steven Universe, I was like, ouchie, stop yelling at me. I was like, stop that.
Yeah, feel seen and attacked at the same time.
All of the above.
Yeah. What would be your guilty pleasure show or film?
Guilty pleasure show or film. I thought of I'm laughing because I don't know if my partner can hear me, but if they can, they're gonna roll their eyes. Once Upon a Time is definitely a guilty pleasure show.
Yeah.
It's really bad, and I know it's really bad, but it's really good. It's really bad.
Yeah. I've also seen a majority of the show. I don't think I saw the last season, but I was watching it as it was on for a while.
The last season is very much just like the first season reworked in a way, you know. It's like the first Jurassic World movie is just the first Jurassic Park movie, but they just like switched it up a little bit. But yeah, that's one of my guilty pleasure shows. I haven't watched it in a while, but it definitely was one, like, I'd sit down to put it on and I'm like, I know people don't like this show, but I'm just gonna.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Definitely. What show or film gave you your favorite reaction experience with the channel?
Ooh, favorite reaction experience. Gosh, I think it just depends. I'm like, and then I want to say that one. I want to say that one. I think Gravity Falls was a really fun turn for our channel and for Paula and I ourselves. Because again, with that dynamic of like, oh, one person knows, one person doesn't know. We just both, then I just got another. Okay, there's two shows. Gravity Falls was a fun one because with the dynamic of the show and how it's all about like figuring out codes and plotting and trying to decode this or figure that out. And I think that was really fun for Paula and I to be on that end of it with no answers, you know? Like we'd be sitting there talking and trying to figure something out, but we're not getting real-time answers. It's just her and I kind of floundering, being like, I don't know, is this it? And I think that brought a really fun new experience to the channel, which my second option and my second answer is Red Dwarf. Was a huge turning point for our channel in such a wild way. I don't know how much you know about that show.
Very little, yeah.
Very niche British sci-fi sitcom. When the SAG-AFTRA strike happened last year, Paula is a part of the union, and I'm eligible for the union. And either way, we would have wanted to support them however we needed to. And so that meant we had to stop watching a lot of our shows. And we kind of were floundering, and we were like, oh no, what are we going to do? Like, we don't really have much we can watch right now. And we had some options for some British shows. A friend of Paula's was like, oh, you have Red Dwarf recorded. You should watch that. And we were like, okay. And we sat down. It's got to be one of our funniest reactions ever, because we sit down to watch it and we're both like, we've never seen this before, and it's unstruck content, and, you know, we're going to watch this like gritty sci-fi British show because we thought it was going to be like the British version of TNG. And we were like, wow, this will be so much fun. And in the first minute and a half, Paula and I were like, is that a live audience laughing? We were like, what the heck is going on here? Yeah. And it's been a hilarious journey. We went from being like, oh, we'll watch a couple different shows, to all of a sudden releasing 2-episode reactions to Red Dwarf a week. And we had this whole like community of people come out from the woodworks, and we were like, who are all of you? And they were like, we're Red Dwarfers. And we were like, what is happening? So that's a new one that we stumbled upon. It's only been a year that we've been watching it, but it feels like so much longer. That's been a real fun addition.
Yeah, that's great. It's great community to find out of all of that, for sure.
Yes.
What show or film do you wish you could erase from your memory and watch again for the first time on camera?
I thought that question was gonna just be like, which one can you erase and never have seen ever? And I was gonna have an immediate answer, and then I was like, oh, to rewatch again. Yeah. For those wondering, the first Suicide Squad is the movie I would delete from my brain and never watch ever again. Anyways, something I would love. I'm guessing film or TV wise. Yeah.
Yes.
Something I would delete and watch again. It kind of seems like a cop-out answer, but to be able to rewatch Doctor Who for the first time would be so cool. Yeah. Like, the feeling of all of the ups and downs of that show, I think, would be really, really fun to experience again. And getting to share it with an audience, I think, is very special. That would be a fun one. I would love. Yeah. If I could wipe my brain and rewatch it and re-break my heart over and over and over again, I'd do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I love finding the reactions to it, because that's the only way to sort of capture that again.
Feed off of it. I'm like, give me that. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love watching Angela's Doctor Who reactions. It's so good.
Yes. I'm so excited for her to just get further into it. Yeah.
Yes.
And the final question here is, what advice would you give to your past self if you can go back in time when you first started the channel?
Advice I'd give to my past self would be to let go of expectations. I think would be the biggest one. Right. Let go of expectations and let go of the idea that you need to make yourself something for someone else. Mm-hmm. Because I think I spent a lot of time doing that. That is something that I would look at past me and I'd go, hey, just stop. Like, you don't have to worry about it. Just be yourself, and the people who want to be a part of that will be a part of that. And those are the people that matter.
Absolutely. Very, very poignant note to end on. Kat, thank you so much for being here today. I really appreciate you sitting down with us today. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a pleasure. I had a good
Yeah,
time.
and happy birthday as well again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I
31,
hope you enjoy
baby.
it. Yeah, enjoy it. Yeah. Where can we find you online, YouTube or social media or otherwise?
So you can find me under Kat Alysha. That is across the board, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, KAT_ALYSHA. You can also find me on the Gallifrey Gals /pals. We're kind of in the process of switching over. It's a lot. Just switching one letter, and it's a lot of work, you know?
Yeah.
I also have a podcast called The Retcon Pod with Parker Robbins and our good friend Stephanie Johnson. We are diving into the Marvel world, specifically Spider-Man himself, and we've gone all the way back to 1962. And we've been reading a few issues per episode and just having a hoot and holler. So...
That's great. Yeah, we'll have all those links in the description below. You can find us at Passionfruit for us across social media. You can find me at Necron across social media. You can find us at our Patreon and Discord in the links below on screen and in the description. And we'll catch everyone on the next episode.
Thanks, y'all.